For today's review, we are looking at the Best Actions TMNT Shredder the Dreamer figure. Now, of course, before I dive into talking about the accessories and of course the figure, let's take a quick look at two different things first. And let's start off, of course, with the packaging. And I really like this packaging because you have that big window where you can see the figure and all of its accessories, which is a nice touch. And of course, in the corner right there, it does say that this figure can glow in the dark, which is a really cool gimmick to have. And on the other side, you have a label that says limited edition collector card inside, which we will be taking a look at, of course. And as usual, you do get your Best Action sticker included with these figures. And on this side of the box, you have an artwork that sadly is being covered up by the Ross price tag. And it's the same artwork on the card, so you will see that soon enough. And of course, on this side of the box, you do have an artwork of Shredder in some sort of action pose. Pretty cool. And on the back of the box, you have a render of the figure, and they do show which parts will glow in the dark if you shine light on this figure. So pretty cool that a lot of the pieces here will glow in the dark. And of course, right here on the side, you do have this sort of list of all the accessories that are included with the figure. And just like the Dark Leonardo packaging, up in this corner, they do credit the artist where they took this design of Shredder from. And of course, this is the artist that draws for the IDW TMNT comics. So pretty cool. And I don't know why he's called Shredder the Dreamer, because I've never read any of the TMNT comics. So if you do have like knowledge of why he's called this, feel free to share in the comments below if you want to. And now let's take a look at that collector card. And of course, on the front of it, it is the artwork that was being covered up. And it's pretty cool. I like the fact that you have an image of Shredder here, and you see this sort of green color stuff on his armor pieces, just like what we saw on one side of the box. And I have no clue what this is supposed to be. Like, is it supposed to be some sort of power that he has? I don't know, because I've never read this comic. And I do like the fact that they did use the glow-in-the-dark gimmick to simulate this, which is actually pretty smart, because it's better than, you know, painting it all green, because I think that would just look really dumb. But the fact that it's glow-in-the-dark just makes it better. So pretty cool that they try to simulate this with that sort of gimmick. And of course, there is a read-up on the back of the card. And let's read what it says. The cunning and ruthless leader of the Foot Clan, Shredder is a skilled martial artist and strategist. He is feared and respected by his allies and enemies alike, and his ultimate goal is to conquer and rule New York City with an iron fist. And that's a pretty good read-up on who Shredder is as a character. And now, let's talk about the accessories that are included with this figure. And let's start with, of course, the interchangeable hands, because he has 6 of them in total. 4 in the box, and of course, 2 that are on the figure by default. And as you can see, he does have 2 of these item holding hands, which is needed because he does have weapons. So in this case, if you want him to dual wield those 2 weapons that you can see right here on the back of the box right there. I don't know what those are called. I think they're supposed to be scythes. I don't remember the actual name to them. You can have him dual wield those if you want to. And of course, if you want him to hold his katana blade, which he does come with, well, there you go with these hands for that option. So that's pretty cool. And of course, he does come with 4 other hands. And let's start with these 2 hands right here. I call them the open gesture hands because I don't really know what they're supposed to be. This one looks like he's going to grab somebody. This one, maybe he's doing some sort of like leap sort of action or something, where maybe he's climbing the wall. I don't freaking know. But you do get these 2 hands, of course, so that's kind of cool. And then the other 2 hands, one of them I think is a pointing finger hand, because that's what it looks like. And he's not really going to be holding anything with this sort of hand. This one definitely looks like he's grabbing somebody. So, yeah, pretty cool. So, 4 different hand gestures of some kind. Sadly, there is no fist hands, because In this case, it would have been nice if he had a pair of his hands, because let's just say that he doesn't want to use his weapons, like his sword, and he wanted to use these claw weapons. Well, usually in that sense, if he's going to strike his opponent with these claws, he would probably be using some sort of fist gesture, right? So, sadly, he does not have those as an option. And also, these claws are soft PVC, so they will warp if you're not careful with them. And as you can see with some of the ones I already have, they warped in the packaging, so that's not good. Okay, let's talk about his weapons that he does have. So, of course, you got two of these, which I think they are supposed to be scythes. That's what these are looking like to me. But if they do have a proper name, do share in the comments below if you know what they are. So you got two of those. And of course, he comes with his katana blade, which I think is a pretty cool accessory. I like this more than those other two weapons. I'll probably have him hold this more often than those because, you know, these katana swords just look better on Shredder, in my opinion. Like, this is more of his signature weapon than whatever these are. So, and sadly, he does not have a sheath to store this sword into, and that's another thing that I'm going to bring up now. As you can see with the figure, there is no way to store any of his weapons on him, which I think is kind of sad, because, you know, we looked at this figure last week, of course, which is the Dark Leonardo, and he has the ability to store all his weapons on him. I don't know why when they made this particular Shredder figure, whenever this figure came out, they did not think that through. So, and now onto the last accessory, which of course is his unmasked head sculpt. And as you can see, he has a very angry expression, and he does have the side eyes, which is not great, because what is he getting angry at, and why is he looking to the side, right? I do like that detail right there where you see this sort of scar mark on his left side of his face where his eye is, so that's pretty cool. But most of the time, I'm probably going to just keep this figure with his masked head sculpt. Okay, and that's pretty much all the accessories, and now let's talk about the figure. And in terms of the aesthetics for this figure, I like the details that are sculpted on here. Right away, you can already see all the texturing that is present throughout his clothing that he's wearing, which I really like that they did that, because it really reminds me a lot of some of the DC Multiverse figures that I have from McFarlane Toys. When I see this sort of level of texturing, it's just good, you know? They didn't have to do this. In some cases, they would have probably just left this all flat. But the fact that they did this, and they went out of their way to add all this texture into the figure, just makes it better. So that is pretty cool. And one thing that is interesting to me is that he doesn't have a torso armor. I thought he would, because usually he does kind of wear one, I think, or maybe he doesn't. I'm not too sure anymore, because, you know, there's so many variations of Shredder that we've seen in the TMNT like animated shows, and I guess even the comics, that to this point it's like, what does he wear normally, right? So, yeah. And speaking of his arms, he does have these shoulder armor pieces here, which is pretty freaking cool. He does have the gauntlet down here. And in this case, if you do have this figure, for example, and you do want to make this figure pop more, these parts right here definitely would benefit from a silver metallic marker, because that would make these look more like metal and they will shine more. So if you are a customizer, that is definitely a good option right here to make these pop. And also down here with these claw-like weapons. So, and it's the same thing on this arm, of course, as well. And now let's talk about the head sculpt. Head sculpt is pretty good. I like the fact that, you know, his face is covered up with his face mask. His eyes are in that white color, which, of course, we know his eyes are not white. It's more like the shadows of his helmet covering most of his face. And then you just see these two glimmering white eyes. And that's supposed to strike fear into his enemy, right? So that's pretty cool. And of course, his helmet, same thing, would benefit more If this was painted in a silver metallic color than this sort of flat gray that you see here. And yeah, there's not a whole lot of details of his helmet because it's pretty simple in its design, but nevertheless, they did a pretty good job, so it does work. And of course, down here, he does have his leg armor that goes up to his knees. Pretty cool. And he does have these, I don't know if I would call these shoes, but he's wearing something that's covering his feet, and you can see an outline of his toes, which is pretty cool. So there's that. And on the back of the figure, he does have his cape, which is connected to this collar piece up here that wraps around his neck. And similar to a lot of the McFarlane DC Multiverse capes that we used to see in the past, there's that same sort of texturing, and I like that detail because it's not flat and it makes it look like this is actual real fabric. So pretty freaking cool. And that's pretty much all the aesthetics with this figure when it comes to the details, because there's not a whole lot going on here. There's only like, what, 4 different colors. You got purple, you got gray, you got black in the middle, and of course you have his skin tone with his arms. And the arm muscles, they're okay. They don't really like pop out a whole lot. And I think the arms are kind of sculpted weird in this case because they look too skinny when they're trying to be muscular. So yeah, so not that perfect, but of course, outside of just these few flaws, I think the figure still looks good in the end result. And also, this is my second Shredder figure. My first one is, of course, another Best Action one, but it's not in this scale. That figure is like a 8-inch scale figure, I think, and its scale is better with my DC Multiverse figures than this line of TMNT figures. So it's kind of weird how they have like smaller figures and bigger figures. I don't know if that's just the only one that's that big, because most of the other Best Action TMNT figures that I have acquired are all in this scale with this Shredder figure, I guess. So, okay, let's talk about the articulation. And since this figure is new for me, some of the articulation on here is going to be quite stiff. So, with his head sculpt, looking up is not going to be great because you have this sort of collar piece here that hinders his articulation, and he's not going to be looking up at all, right? Even the back part is going to hinder it as well. When it comes to looking down, he can look down pretty decent, so that's not too bad. Turning his head, side to side, not a problem. Tilting his head side to side, also not a problem. It's mainly just looking up. So in terms of articulation of his head sculpt, it's okay. Not the best, not the worst. In terms of his arm, he can spread it out to a T-pose if you want to. He can swing this back and forth, and it will not be hindered by his cape because the shoulder pieces here are separate from his body. So that's a good thing. And these pieces right here are also soft PVC. So, you do want to be careful with these, of course, if you're moving the arms. And he does have a bicep swivel, as you can see right there, which is not a great sort of cut when you start moving them because it looks really strange when you break the sculpt apart. And also, my copy has a QC problem where these arms look like they want to fall off. Like, look at this side, right? But it's not something that's hard to fix. In this case, I probably most likely will just use super glue, let that dry, and then put the arm back in if it does choose to pop off. But so far I haven't had any issues. So, it just looks weird having that gap right there, as you can see. And of course, his arm does have the double jointed, so that does work. And he does have swivel in the hands right here with the articulation, so it does swivel. There is no swivel with the hands themselves because, as you can see, this is connected to the hinge. So it is one entire piece. And in terms of his torso, you do have some articulation. It's not the best because it's really freaking tight. And leaning forward is not possible at all. Like, it barely wants to move. Leaning back also doesn't want to move either. so not great. And then when it comes to his waist articulation, I almost forgot what to call this. I'm fumbling so bad today. It is the same as some of those Marvel Legend figures. You know, it's the same thing where they have this sort of cut here and it's quite ugly. So there's no sort of like thing to cover this. So yeah, and if you're wondering if it leans forward or not, usually in these cases, there is no movement with the waist where it can lean forward because it only rotates. So, and for his legs, well, they do kick out, as you can see. Not a bad kick in this case. The reason why I'm doing it with this leg is because the other leg just pops off. Like, that is not good. It's not broken. It just pops off really easily. So all I just do here is just put it back in there and then it'll just go back in. As for spreading his legs out, that's as far as it goes. So not full splits. And in terms of double jointed articulation in the legs, well, as you can see, let me just take this figure apart. It does work. Not too bad. And of course, with his leg down here where his feet is, you do have articulation and the swivel. So most of the articulation is okay, but some of it is not the greatest. So, you know, maybe in the future they could probably improve that if they do continue making more figures from this line, because I have no clue when these figures release for this line, because I don't follow the Best Action, you know, social pages that they have and when they announce stuff. So yeah, but with this figure, articulation's okay. Just the fact that one side of his leg popping off like that is not great. Okay, now let me show some of the accessories on this figure, and let's show him holding the sword, because the sword is probably the best thing. So here he is holding the sword. Let me just get it on his freaking hands because they are quite tight. And there you go. He got his sword in his hand. Pretty freaking cool. I like that. Probably going to have him hold this weapon more, as I've said, because I prefer him with the sword more than these. And the sword is more like his signature weapon. So, pretty cool. And, you know, we can swap one of these hands off really easily. Let's take this one. And let's put it in. So there he is with a open gesture hand of some kind. Whatever you use that for. So, okay, now let's do some comparisons with some other figures. And of course, let's bring in the figure that we looked at last week from the same line. Here he is next to Dark Leonardo. And in terms of scale, I think this is actually pretty good, because Shredder is supposed to be taller than the Turtles. And he is taller than Leonardo in this case. So, not too bad. Here he is next to a Marvel Legend figure with, of course, Superior Iron Man. And yeah, I don't think he scales well with Marvel Legends. Marvel Legends are like 6-inch scale figures. This guy is definitely, you know, not 6-inch in scale. He's probably around like 5-inch. So maybe scaling with like an SHF figure makes more sense than a Marvel Legend figure. And here he is with another Marvel Legend figure who is bigger than, of course, the regular 6-inch scale. Here he is next to Destroyer. And as you can see, Destroyer just towers over him, which is pretty accurate because Destroyer is bigger than a normal human. And last but not least, let's have him next to Mario from the Jakks Pacific line of figures. This is the Mario figure from the movie, and I did find this guy at Ross as well. So yeah, that's my first ever Mario figure that I ever owned. And as you can see, Shredder, of course, is taller than Mario. And that's pretty much going to be all the comparisons for this review. And if you enjoyed today's look at the Shredder figure, do give this video a like. And here is a look at what we are looking at next. It is going to be Tolka. I think that's how you pronounce his name. So yeah, it's going to be fun to talk about this next time. And with that said, if you want to subscribe to the channel for more action figure content and whatever else I do on here, you can. You don't have to. In the end of the day, I make these videos for fun. And with that said, take care, and I will see you in the next video.